Thank you. So yeah, as Fernando introduced, I'm going to talk about HTA trials and whether we are going fast and furious. So before I do that, let me introduce you to my friend. Just to let you know, this example has been adapted from this book. Let me introduce to you my friend Homer. So he's a man, approximately 50 years old. He's definitely overweight. He has diabetes, he drinks alcohol excessively, and he doesn't practice any exercise. So not good life, or very good life, depending on how you look at it. Homer has never had any major illness. His doctor, however, has advised him to take a healthy lifestyle and take care of his medications for diabetes and definitely reduce his alcohol consumption and make exercise. But unfortunately, because Homer doesn't really feel bad, he doesn't really follow his advice of his doctor. But one day, Homer feels strong pain when going upstairs. His GP suspects that his pain may be associated with congestive angina and actually refers him to the cardiologist. And the cardiologist, unfortunately, confirms the suspicion that Homer has problems and has suffered a congestive heart angina event. Then Homer has catheterization and the cardiologist found narrowing of his blood vessels. And that means that actually Homer is at risk of having an MI at any time. The cardiologist recommends him to have an angioplasty. But we know that an angioplasty is a really expensive procedure. But fortunately, Homer's insurance covered the $20,000 bill of the procedure. Homer returned to his doctor that advised him to change his lifestyle completely. And initially, Homer has, good effort and he follows his advice, but actually, over time, he started to struggle. And the bad habit returned. So Homer still started again to eat badly, drink a lot of alcohol, and not to do much exercise at all. This means that after 5 years, Homer suffered a severe MI and he is hospitalized. And he has to have a bypass surgery that costs a lot of money. And then Homer survives the operation, but after that, he has many complications, and unfortunately, he dies. So this example, as I was saying at the beginning, analyzes the US healthcare system and actually gives a good example of a dynamic cost-benefit analysis. So we can ask ourselves a few questions. Have the doctor acted appropriately? Well, we could argue that they did everything that it was on their power to save Homer's life and to actually make Homer to change his lifestyle. But could we have done something differently? And was the treatments that Homer received, were they good value for money? And in fact, this is the question that we as HTA bodies keep trying to answer all the time: how to balance the fixed healthcare budget of a system, basically knowing that we have to do that under huge opportunity costs and the consideration that what we spend in some conditions or in some people we cannot be expended in somebody else and in other conditions. So just a quick recap. I know that you are all aware that HTA follows different principles than regulators, but we are all interlinked, which means that although we can use the same evidence, we can have different decisions. And one of the criticisms that from HTA bodies is that we are very slow. We are not fast at all, and we cannot keep the pace with innovation. So we indeed look at the impact of early access strategies from regulators, in particular a conditional marketing authorization that allows technologies to have a marketing authorization under certain conditions when they don't have robust evidence, but the drugs that are being considered for that and satisfies an unmet medical need. or authorization in exceptional circumstances are a particular case when a drug can be authorized because there are drugs for aim at very rare conditions, or it's very difficult to create the robust evidence that we would expect to see for regulatory approval under full marketing authorization. So these two type of marketing authorization is what we studied. And indeed, we are seeing more and more of these type of authorizations, and NICE and HTA bodies wants to be timely, and it's one of our principles to allow patient access as soon as marketing authorization is out there. So we try to be fast and furious. And indeed, what we aim to achieve is to have final recommendation as soon as marketing authorization is out, in order to not to delay the access for patients to potentially beneficial treatments. The question is it good, the fact that we are going fast and furious, or are we going too fast and too furious? So that's exactly what we look at in our paper, because the fact that these technologies are coming early means that they are coming with less robust evidence, are coming earlier based on surrogate outcomes, with not the follow-up that we would like to see, with trials that are not what we would like to see either. And therefore, that means that they come huge uncertainty, although with huge potential benefits at the same time. So we can do two things. We can try and mitigate that uncertainty. So how can we do that? Well, we can try and get as much as evidence as possible and to do assumptions. That's what we ask our academics to do, and companies to do as well. Like make hundreds of scenario analyses and collect further data. And we can wait until that further data evolves, and then we can actually reassess or reevaluate the technology. Or we can actually get Tony Stark to do a deal with Thanos and agree on a negotiation, a price deal that actually will make the uncertainty to be bearable, given the deal or the commercial management deal that we can do in order to get the technology in the system. So how, what we've done, we try to investigate the uncertainty stemming from these products authorized by the EMA under conditional marketing authorization or authorization under exceptional circumstances, and what was the impact into NICE's recommendations. So we identify a sample, and the EMA license doesn't always reflect NICE's evaluation, because when we start an evaluation, we don't really know what the final license is gonna be. So it's not a like to like. So it took us some time to identify the products which receive marketing authorization under these circumstances by the EMA and match them with the NICE HTAs or highly specialized technologies. And then we finished that in August, but then we traced that status until August 2019 to see whether there were any changes. We look at whether the technology was recommended, and in particular, whether it was recommended under certain commercial negotiations, such as a patient access scheme and managed access arrangement, or whether it was recommended under or within the English Cancer Drugs Fund, or whether it was not recommended. We also look at whether the conversion from conditional marketing authorization triggered any review of a NICE evaluation. And we also try to look at the drivers of the negative recommendations, and also to the odds of having a commercial negotiation being because of the fact of the technology being authorized under conditional marketing authorization or authorization under exceptional circumstances compared with products with full marketing authorization. So here are the results. In those products that were authorized under conditional marketing authorization or authorization under exceptional circumstances in December 2016 by the EMA, 37 of them were still conditional or exceptional, 14 had been converted to full, and three were withdrawn. And the 3 withdrawn products were these 3. One of them showing indeed a lack of efficacy, and the recommendations from NICE and also the license were withdrawn. Another one was withdrawn due to inability of the sponsor or the company to provide the data required and the conditional marketing authorization requirements. And another one was just withdrawn due to voluntary withdrawal from the company. How this had changed by 2019? Well, now in 2019, we had of these original products, 52 products, 27 of them were still authorized and still conditional or exceptional circumstances. 21 now were converted to full and 6 were now withdrawn. So the 3 additional withdrawn products, most of them were withdrawn either for commercial reasons or back here at the bottom because of lack of demand. So how this looks like when we match it to the NICE evaluations? Well, these 52 products matched 30 evaluations, including 2 reviews at NICE. 22 of them were published and 6 were ongoing. And the result of these 22 published meant that beyond the ones that were withdrawn, terminated, discontinued, or suspended for different reasons, for example, for the fact that the company did not submit for the evaluation when they were invited to submit for the evaluation, of the one, taking aside those 7, 12 were recommended and 3 were not recommended, which means that 80% of them were recommended. And 2 of the recommended one originally had negative recommendation. One of them was crizotinib, and looking at the case of crizotinib, it wasn't recommended in 2003 in its first technology appraisal because it has a very high ICER, and the committee thought that it has lack of robust clinical data and immature data, and they had mixed treatment comparisons being used in the analysis, and the committee considered it not to be robust enough. But NICE recommended crizotinib in a review following a new path from the transition from the old CDF to the new CDF, Cancer Drugs Fund. And when the committee looked at the new data and reappraised the technology, the committee actually said that the size of the overall survival estimate was still uncertain. So although there was more data at the time of review, the committee still felt that the OS data was still very uncertain. So these are the main reasons as to why the products with conditional marketing authorization or exceptional circumstances were not recommended, most of them because of lack of robust data, immature data, surrogate outcomes being used, single-arm trials, and therefore a very high ICER in most of the cases. Interestingly, conversions from conditional marketing authorization for these products to full marketing authorization, those 3 products not recommended, did not trigger an appraisal review. When looking into this, we found that the conversion from sunitinib to full marketing authorization was actually based on data from second line instead of the first line. So one of the earlier recommendations from NICE was in, right now I don't remember if it was second or first line, but basically the data that was presented in the other line of treatment trigger a new appraisal, but obviously not a review of the first appraisal because the new data didn't match the objective of the appraisal. In the case of panitumumab, NICE started what we call a review proposal process in which we look at the new evidence that has emerged over a period of years, and then we make recommendations on whether we feel like the technology should be reviewed or not. NICE concluded that it should move to a static list and therefore not reviewed. And interestingly, the company agreed when we consulted on this. And ofatumumab, when we did this study, I think that it had been converted into full marketing authorization, but reading the EPAR, you could read that there was still not statistically significant difference in PFS, which was the primary outcome in one of the trials requested by the regulators. Under the conditional marketing authorization. And at the time that we wrote the paper, NICE hadn't started the review proposal process yet, so they may well have done it now. Actually, I think that now ofatumumab is is withdrawn. So it may well all have changed now. So in terms of commercial negotiation, 100% of those products, I mean, I know that we are talking about very small sample size, don't judge me, but those are the products that have gone through. So we understand that these estimates are, I mean, they have limitations because of the sample that we are talking about, but 100% of them, all of them had been recommended with a some sort of commercial negotiation, either a patient access scheme, managed access agreement, or they have been recommended within the Cancer Drugs Fund. And in terms of how this has changed in 2019, now we have recommended 8 and not recommended 4, making it approximately still 80% of the published one that NICE has. So one of the reasons why we publish these percentages based on recommended and not recommended is because we do not have recommendations for the withdrawn, terminated, discontinued, or suspended. So basically, we cannot say anything about them. NICE has not made recommendations whatsoever. So just to give you a flavor of some of these products, for example, brentuximab vedotin was indeed in the first time that we checked in 2017, recommended within the CDF. And now it had exited the CDF and has been recommended for routine commissioning under a commercial arrangement. And osimertinib, whose license was being converted to full, was under the review of, was recommended within the CDF by NICE, and it was undergoing the review by the time that we look at it. So conclusions. Are HTA bodies going fast and furious, or too fast or too furious? Well, we know that the aim of the regulators, and with these initiatives for conditional marketing authorization or early access initiative, is to speed up access for products that have a very high unmet medical need. But we recognize and have to acknowledge that that means that there is an increased uncertainty at the time of decision making for HTA bodies. We have shown that that meant an increase in the use of managed access agreements, and these managed access agreements are very difficult to implement in practice. So we've seen that actually license conversions didn't trigger an appraisal review, which may actually mean that there is lack of robustness on that data being collected post-marketing authorization. Or it may mean that the data required by the regulators and a conditional marketing authorization is not helpful for an HTA evaluation. So efforts should be made to ensure that high-quality post-marketing authorization studies are being conducted and the relevant evidence is being collected. And we advocate that those early access initiatives should actually be the exception to the rule rather than the norm, because we can end up in a very difficult situation if this becomes the norms, with managed access agreements being very difficult to implement, and being the norm, the fact that low quality evidence is what we are seeing. So we need to have robust plans for long-term evidence generations in order not just to save the healthcare system interest, but also the patient's interest, because most of the occasions, we don't really know whether those technologies work and which type of adverse effects may arise while further data is being collected. So up for discussion, whether we feel like we are going too fast and too furious, or whether that's actually what we should do, and we should actually go fast and try to meet the regulators' timelines and initiatives that are